What's up, amigos? I hope everyone is doing well tonight. I just want to remind you all that you're pretty damn cool. Now in today's video, we have something different, at least spec-wise. Today we have my penetrating shot rogue build. Pen shot is definitely the best range ability in my honest opinion. It absolutely screen clears and under the right circumstances can blow bosses up if played properly. We are utilizing combo points because honestly I think combo points is still just way too strong, especially when you're speed clearing. If you want to take this build and push with it, you will want to switch a few things up, but it's absolutely possible to still do it with combo points. I have seen people clear 80s with combo points. I've seen people clear 80s with preparation. Now let's start off with our skills first. So our skill tree is a little bit different than Twist and Blades, but we do run Puncture into Fundamental. We max out our Penetrating Shot, of course. We run Advanced Penetrating Shot. This allows us to slow enemies and knock down elite enemies at full energy when we cast Pen Shot. We do run 3 points in the Siphoning Strikes and 3 points in the Sturdy because the idea behind this build is you want a shotgun, so we still play really close range. You can play it at range, but everything just swarms you regardless, so get into the habit of just shotgunning and moving. I am running Shadow Step into Methodical. I really enjoy the outplay ability still with Shadow Step, especially when I want to stun a staggered or lone elite, just to get that extra jump when I'm pushing higher keys. I run 3 points in the Weapon Mastery. Always make sure that you are running crossbows. Crossbows are superior, bows suck. Vulnerable damage is just way too important. And then with Weapon Mastery, we actually gain increased crit strike damage also, so definitely worth. We take 1 point into Concussive and 1 point into Trick Attacks. We take Trick Attacks because we run Manglers, which allows us a lucky hit chance to daze enemies that are vulnerable. We Mass Inflict Vulnerable. We're AoEing constantly in the build, so we're knocking down a lot of enemies with Trick Attacks. With Concussive, when we knock down enemies, we gain Crit Strike chance. We take a point into Dark Shroud because we run Umbrous, which is another lucky hit modifier that allows us to gain Dark Shroud stacks even when Dark Shroud isn't on our bar. Every time that we crit with a marksman ability is when we have that chance. We take 1 point into Exploit. It's not as important because we have constant damage going out because we run Double Imbue. We don't need extra damage to Healthy and Injured. This is more of a prereq for Malice, which is why we take 3 points in the Malice. 9% increased damage to vulnerable enemies. We take 1 point into Shadow Crash. Just an extra stun with shadow damage, not like we need it, because when we shadow imbue, we blow everything up. We never see a stun. It's a prereq for consuming shadows. This is what allows us to maintain our energy when we're speed farming. We're just constantly screen clearing with shadow imbuement. Speaking of shadow imbuement, we do take 1 point. 1 point is all we need, and we run blended shadow imbuement for an extra source of vulnerable, just like fundamental. We max out our poison imbuement. This is important, especially when we're bossing. And then we run blended poison imbuement, which gives us 75% increased poison damage from our crit strikes. We take 3 points in the precision imbuement, which grants us 9% increased crit strike chance with our imbued skills. 1 point into innervation. This is more of a prereq, but it is nice just to have a 10% lucky hit chance to gain 8 energy. We take 2 points in the Alchemist Fortune. Non-physical damage you deal has 10% increased lucky hit chance. This is applied to our imbuements, which allows us to try and proc more of our Umbrous to gain more stacks of Dark Shroud. 3 points in the Trap Mastery because we do use Death Trap. When Death Trap activates, you gain 12% increased crit strike chance against vuln enemies and crowd controlled enemies for 4 seconds. Again, we run Death Trap into Prime into Supreme. 1 point into Adrenaline Rush, 5% increased energy regen while we're moving. 2 points into Haste. This is really nice when we're bossing. While below 50% max energy, we gain 10% attack speed. Keystone passive of choice is Precision. Anytime we crit with a marksman skill, it grants us 4% increased crit strike damage per stack, up to a maximum of 20%. Once we hit 5 stacks, our next attack is a guaranteed crit that deals 40% increased crit damage. Consumes all stacks, rinse and repeat. So let's go ahead and take a look at our gear. Our helmet. This is pure defensive that I have on all of my gear setups. We have Poison Imbue, total armor, max life, cooldown reduction. It is the Might aspect, which grants us damage reduction with basic skills. My chest piece has 4 defensive affixes on it. Global damage reduction, damage from close enemies, total armor, and max life. This is where my Umbrus is. I have a perfect Umbrus aspect that grants 50% lucky hit chance to grant those Dark Shroud shadow stacks. For my gloves, I have attack speed, crit, pen, and dex gloves with Edge Master aspect. I have been contemplating if I want to push higher keys that I'll just run Venomous instead of the Edge Master to just take full advantage of the constant poison imbuement and poison infinite stacking that's going on right now. My pants, I have max life, damage reduction from distant, and global damage reduction, but I also have damage for 4 seconds after killing an elite. I run cheats here, 22% less damage from crowd controlled enemies. So instead of penitent greaves, I've been running these boots that grant max evade charges, gives me movement speed, dex, and energy cost reduction. It's nice to have a main stat, the energy reduction, and just having max evade charges because we're not running dash on our build. But it also is really nice because I'm running manglers, and this is what gives us the chance to daze vulnerable enemies. This is our crossbow that we are using with this build. It is the trick shot aspect. Whenever penetrating shot damages an enemy, 2 additional arrows split off of either side. I have core damage, slow, dex, and crit damage on here. I'm up to 5 million gold every time I want to enchant this. I have not been lucky and gotten vulnerable damage yet, but ideally you want to replace the damage to slowed enemies to vulnerable, and then this is a perfect crossbow. For our necklace, we have the rapid. Now this is pretty important, I feel, because of just how you want to play the build. You want to generate your combo points as fast as possible, so you have a 23 to 45% attack speed with basic skills. I have weapon mastery +3 and +3 imbuement skills on this with a percentage dex and damage reduction from close enemies. My ring is the accelerating loop. Crit strike with core skills increase my attack speed. Again, it's just quality of life because we constantly want to just generate those combo points as fast as possible. I have max life, close enemies, vuln, and crit strike on this. It's really not a bad ring, especially when you're pushing higher keys. You absolutely want that max life. In a perfect world, you would replace that damage to close with crit damage. My second ring is Loop of Corruption. Imbuement skill effects have 40% increased potency against vulnerable enemies. This is great for bossing. This has crit, vuln, max energy, and crit strike damage. Again, in a perfect world, you don't want this max energy, you want something else. Basically anything else at that point. And then for our weapons, our stat sticks for this build, we have the Expectant Sword, core, crit, damage to crowd control, and vuln. Attacking enemies with a basic skill increases damage of your next core skill cast by 10%. And then of course, since we're running combo points, we're running Condemnation. For Paragon, I'll have a full link to the build in the description down below. We're going to briefly go over this though. So in the beginning, we have Infusion, but I will be swapping this out with Ranger once I hit level 15 on this glyph. Once I hit level 15 on the Ranger glyph and slot it into the starting board, you can expect to have 60% extra marksman damage instead of what I have now, which is 30%. We take Skillful for damage, we take Armor, we take the Prime for damage. Our first board of choice, we run Cunning Stratagem. This is because this board grants probably the best defensive layering that you can get in any board. You get a total of 600 armor. 600 is massive. Between the Slayer node here, the Lawless node here. We also grant ourselves a ton of core damage between Finisher and Dominant. Glyph of Choice is Exploit. This is level 15, but it can be socketed and you get the bonus. It does not have to be level 15. Second board of choice is Exploit Weakness. The glyph I use is Combat. Again, this is 30 out of 25. It's level 15, but it doesn't have to be level 15 to have full effect. This gives us crit strike damage with core skills. This board is really nice. It gives us a lot of vulnerable damage between exploit, and then we also grant ourselves a lot of damage to elites because this hunter killer is actually a dex bonus requirement. By the time you get here, you should have 475 dex. And 32% just from this one node is absolutely insane. In total, between this node and the 3 magics, we are getting 56% damage to elites. Exploit Weakness is nice when we're bossing. It just gives us a constant damage increase. Our third board of choice here is Eldritch Bounty. This gives us imbuement element damage by 20% for 6 seconds and 20% resistances, but it's also really nice to have imbued skill damage and non-physical damage, and a lot of imbuement skill cooldown. This allows us just to spam our imbuements all the time. And then, as I said in the beginning, the glyph of choice here right now is Ranger, but I will be swapping this with Infusion. Infusion will be granted the bonus. It does not have to be level 15. So I'm going to finish up this video with some gameplay at the end here. If you made it this far, I appreciate you all. Thank you for watching, and until next time, amigos, take care. Nope.